Here on Book Rake, we love feminist dystopians. Books like The Handmaid's Tale are kind of my bread and butter, and now there is a new one coming. Margaret Atwood has written a sequel called The Testaments, which is set 15 years after the events of the original, and it's not connected to the second series of the TV show. This is a new story we haven't heard before. This is Margaret Atwood's vision for the future of Gilead, so I am so excited to read it. But while we're waiting for that, we are just going to have to read as many other feminist dystopians as we can. And I've got a really good selection here to talk to you about, and I've come here to chat to you about them to Pages Cheshire Street, which is the perfect place to talk about feminist dystopians. Not because it's dystopian, but because it is very feminist. So this whole bookshop is dedicated to showcasing books by women and by trans and gender diverse authors. And it is absolutely gorgeous. I've been looking around, such an amazing selection of books and so many lovely little places to sit and read. They are gonna have to kick me out at the end of this because I am not going willingly. So I've got 9 books here to tell you about, so that should tide you over and keep you good and busy until The Testaments comes out. So the perfect next book for fans of The Handmaid's Tale has to be Only Ever Yours by Louise O'Neill. This is a modern retelling of Atwood's story. It's a YA book, but with really strong crossover appeal. Louise O'Neill writes really well, both for young adults and older adults. So this one is set in a world where baby girls are no longer born naturally, but instead bred in schools and trained for their whole life in the art of pleasing men. And when they graduate, the ones who are rated the highest can then become companions, who are basically allowed to live at home and be wives and mothers until they're no longer useful, and the ones left behind will either become concubines or teachers. So you can see the Handmaid's Tale resemblance there. And this book follows 2 of the students, Frida and Isabel, and what happens to them when they try to resist this system that has been forced on them. So it's really hard to read, it's very dark, but it is really powerful. And now for another really hideous world for you to imagine. In Vox by Christina Dolce, women are only allowed to speak 100 words every day. So they wear these bracelets and receive strong electric shocks if they go over their word limit. And some of the most powerful scenes in this for me were watching our main character Jean, who used to be a really well-respected scientist before this rule was put into place, try and raise her children. So she has a young daughter and trying to teach her daughter to value herself in this world where her silence is seen as the most important thing. And Jean also has a son, slightly older, who has been really conditioned by this society that he's grown up in, so he is constantly arguing with his mother about her value as a woman. So those scenes were the most chilling for me to read. And now for something a bit less far-fetched. This is a dystopia that is so close to our real world, it is terrifying. This is The Farm by Joanne Ramos. So The Farm is an organisation that provides surrogate mothers for mega rich clients. And the surrogates are called hosts, and they are very well cared for at the farm as long as they deliver healthy babies. And we hear from a few different points of view, the main one being Jane, who is one of the hosts, and May, who is the owner of this organisation. And it's really powerful having both points of view, and really scary because from May's point of view, we can see quite how easy it is under hyper-capitalism for people to be turned into commodities, and the violations of basic human rights that people are willing to turn a blind eye to in exchange for money. And then from Jane's point of view, we just see her becoming increasingly trapped and helpless within this system. This was one of my favourite books I've read so far this year. And now for something pretty different. Salt Slow by Julia Armfield is a collection of 9 short stories, all about female bodies and female appetites and female sexuality, and all with a big dose of magical realism just to make it all extra weird. So where the stories I've talked about so far might make you feel scared for women, these stories might make you feel scared of women and girls. Especially one of the stories is about a girl band who it's hinted might not be fully human, and the violent mania that their music seems to inspire in the mainly teenage girls who listen to it. And the title story, Salt Slow, is about a post-apocalyptic future in which the world has flooded, and a couple are afloat above the ruins of their lost world and preparing for the woman to give birth into this new reality. Which leads me perfectly onto my next book, The End We Start From Megan Hunter, which is basically about that. So in this one, a woman gives birth right at the beginning of the story, just before climate change causes this biblical flood that forces everyone out of London and moving further north in search of dry land. And it's a very quick read, very sparse, compelling, haunting language, and it's all about motherhood, and the bonds between women in this strange new reality. And while we're on the theme of end of the world stories, in Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, it is a flu virus that wipes out the majority of the population. And the book jumps between the before and the after of this virus, the after being about 20 years into the future. And there's a large cast of characters in this book, one of the main ones being Kirsten, who was a child when the virus first struck and is now a travelling performer with a group called the Symphony, who perform Shakespeare's plays. But on their journey, the Symphony come across a dangerous prophet, and various members of their group begin to disappear. So it's a really scary, sinister, page-turning story, but also a really beautiful look at how interconnected humans are, and also a fight for the importance of art, even in this post-apocalyptic landscape. The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood, this one is kind of feminist horror. So 10 women wake up from a drugged sleep to find themselves in a compound in the middle of the Australian outback. They've got no phones, no computers, and they are surrounded by a 30-foot electric fence. And none of the women know why they're there, but as they talk to each other, they slowly discover they all have one thing in common, which is that they have all been involved in sex scandals with powerful men, and so have obviously been sent here to be silenced. And we never hear the full stories, but that actually works really well, because from the few little words we hear of each, we realise we have already heard these stories. We know these types of stories so well. But where the book takes a really dark turn is when a scheduled food delivery fails to show up. And so the women realise that they have been forgotten there, but that so have their male jailers. The Godless Boys by Naomi Wood is a bit of a different one in that it's actually an alternate history instead of a dystopian future. So this imagines that after the war, the church took control of England and non-believers were deported to this remote island off the coast of the north of England. Fast forward to the 1980s, and now a group of boys who grew up there terrorise the island, searching for the religious spies that they are convinced are among them. Until one day, a girl shows up on the island, hidden away in the boat from the mainland that brings them food and supplies. And one of the boys from this gang falls in love with her, which kickstarts a violent reaction across the island. And I'm finishing off with a book that you will find on every Books Like the Handmaid's Tale list, but I just couldn't leave it off. This is The Power by Naomi Alderman. And Naomi Alderman was actually mentored by Margaret Atwood, so the similarities are unsurprising. So this one imagines what might happen if women developed a physical power over men. In the case of this book, it's an electric force from their fingertips that they can use to inflict serious injury on men. And we know from the prologue that 5,000 years in the future, society has fully become a matriarchy. Women have become the dominant sex, and the world looks like a subverted version of the patriarchy that we are familiar with. And then the main chunk of the book follows the events of the first decade or so after this power comes into being. Now, this is absolutely not a kind of feminist utopia showing how much better women would handle their power. This is a violent, difficult, unpleasant book that shows quite how dangerous that amount of power in anyone's hands can be. And this is a book that I have not stopped thinking about since I first read it 3 years ago. So those 9 books should keep you good and busy while you're waiting for the Testaments. And if you want something else to get excited about, there's also a book coming out early next year called Wilder Girls, which is going to be a gender-flipped Lord of the Flies. So I'm also adding that one to my virtual TBR as soon as I can get my hands on it. So do give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below letting me know your favourite feminist dystopians. It's just a genre that I cannot get enough of. And do hit that subscribe button below for new videos every week. Coming up next week, the lovely Dougie Pointer from McFly is coming on the channel. He's going to tell us how to live a plastic-free life, so make sure you don't miss out on that one. And of course, you can always go and follow us over on Instagram @BookBreakUK for a behind-the-scenes look at our channel. See you next time!